one of the most important Western video game companies of the 80s, the history of Superman started with this cartridge for the Atari 2600. But it doesn't end there. In 1983, Richard Lester directed Superman 3, the comedy chapter of the series, co-starring Richard Pryor in the role of a casual computer genius who accidentally built a super evil computer. Although the first efforts to release an Atari 5200 cartridge version of this movie only existed in a never-seen prototype and this box, they did manage to finish an 800 XL version of the game that also never saw the light of day. Why? Well, we'll see. This is Superman 3 for the Atari 800 XL. The first prototype characteristic that we can see in this game is that due to the never officially released state of the game, Atari ported the music from another game to this one. And of course, everybody knows where these notes come from. No, it's not the Superman theme, and no, Star Trek The Next Generation wasn't the first one to use it. Actually, both video games had the same game musician, Brad Fuller. The game wasn't good enough for the average quality of an Atari 800 game. The difficulty of controls were one of the big flaws of the game. You control Superman, trying to stop the evil giant computer from destroying Metropolis with its evil rays. The game, as you can see, is an exploitation of the classic missile command, taking it from another perspective. But it's the same game in more than one area. You have 8 districts of the city to defend from the overload rays that the supercomputer throws over the entire city. If you touch the supercomputer, or the green rays it throws at you, you lose your offensive superpowers for a few seconds. If one overload ray reaches any of the districts, it first makes the buildings fall in a blackout, and if it hits them again in the same district with another ray, it'll set the buildings on fire, forcing Superman to put them out with his super breath. With a few minutes, we finish the wave, with surviving districts counted as in Missile Command. Immediately another wave starts, making the game infinite. No more different stages, no new enemies, the game only increases speed and the number of overload rays. Considering this play mechanic, it's not surprising that the game didn't pass the quality control stage, but in truth, I've seen poorer games than this one for the Atari computers. The affair of Superman and Atari doesn't end there. A division of Atari helmed by Steve Wright worked 14 weeks in the process of creating a video game sequence for the film Superman 3. Warner Brothers expected that Atari could make the entire sequence with the same computers used to create the video games. In fact, this started an urban legend, which stated that these sequences were developed using the same hardware that made up the Atari 5200. Nowadays, we obviously know that these kinds of graphics were impossible to do with an Atari 5200's hardware. But the story lasted a long time until the real truth came to light. Oddly, the samples used in this scene are truly Atari 2600 samples from Pac-Man, but the rest of the scene, 26 seconds in total, cost Warner Brothers $95,000 in equipment and 4 months of work. I believe this sequence was the first CGI that intentionally used the look of a pixelated video game. Efforts to look like a retro game in 1983? What an odd world we live in.